So now where do I do that?
Yeah, I've got it, Prof.
Okay, that's it?
Yeah.
Yes?
Good morning, students. Welcome to theme 4, JXP 151. Please be reminded to mute all your microphones. There's also an option to mute all. Okay. Students, please allow me to welcome Professor Ian Culpan. He's all the way from New Zealand. It's already about 9:30 p.m. in Canterbury. Professor Culpan is from Canterbury University, New Zealand. His research interest is Olympism, physical education in school sport. He's also the co-director of the Center for Olympic Studies. So students, please, just in the chat, can you hear us properly?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Professor Culpan, you're welcome to start.
Ihe Mariora, Tenakoto, Tenakoto, Tenakoto Koto. Ko Mangawai, Tokumanga. Ko Watamata, Tokuawa. Ko Mangawai, Toku Marai. Ko Duchess of Akal, Toku Waka. Ko Kopan Whanau. Ko Tamakiaho. Ko Ian Kopan Tokuinga. Tenakoto, Tenakoto, Tenakoto Koto. Hello, my friends in South Africa. Greetings from New Zealand. I have just given you our Indigenous people in New Zealand, Maori, welcome to you. And in that welcome, I introduce myself. I acknowledge my ancestors. I acknowledge the mountain, which is important to me. I acknowledge the city, the beautiful city of Auckland, which I grew up in. And I acknowledge Christchurch, the city that I live in at the moment. And many of you will be aware over the last 10 years, we've had over 10,000 earthquakes. And so a lot of the city has been destroyed. I acknowledge the Auckland, beautiful Auckland harbour, the waterways, and I acknowledge the ships that my ancestors came from England in 1842 to New Zealand. And interesting enough, I understand that one of my family ancestors got off one of the ships in South Africa because he didn't want to travel any further in those awful ship conditions. So that's called a Maori welcome. So greetings. And today I'm going to spend some time talking about the coach and athlete relationship, because that is very, very important. And when I talk about this, I'm going to really focus on the relationship where the coach has a power relationship. And whilst the coach can have all sorts of variables in that relationship, depending on the sport they're coaching, depending on the age of the athlete, depending on the gender and the sex of the athlete, depending on the culture, depending on the competitive level. These are all things that make up the coach-athlete relationship. However, I really want to focus on one of the most powerful aspects of that relationship, which all those other variables contribute to, and that is around the notion of power, the power relationship between the coach and the athlete. And that is really, really important. And when I do this, I'm going to present to you some theoretical perspectives around power and around leadership. Now, these perspectives, because of the time constraints, they are not going to be covered thoroughly, and that you will become experts on those, but I want to highlight various theoretical positions around power which might help you understand that coach-athlete relationship, and it might send you away to look up some appropriate readings to further develop your understanding. So we're looking at the whole notion of power. Now, in that coach-athlete relationship and theorizing about power types, I'm going to look at 5 main theoretical positions. And all these have been cited in the book by Cassidy Jones and Potrak in 2014. And if you do require readings, LJ, I can send those over to, some of these readings over to you. But the first power and leadership theoretical position was developed by French and Raven. And this is the oldest position. And this is probably the one that has had more literature written about it in terms of the relationships to leadership, and we can transfer the principles of that leadership to the coach-athlete relationship, the coach leading the athlete. And so that's French and Raven. Then there's Bourdieu, who's also got a particular theoretical position around power. And then we go to the French sociologist Foucault, who is extremely, can be extremely complicated in understanding his analysis. And I'll try and highlight the simple principles to help in your understanding. And then we go to Anthony Giddens, his position on power. And then the fifth one is to do with empowerment, which combines a lot of those principles from those other theoretical positions. Now, in my presentation, if you can cope with me talking for 40 or 45 minutes without losing the will to live, then we can devote some time to discussion at the end. And I want to do that, to field some questions. But let's look at French and Raven's particular power taxonomy, which they call it, or sometimes it's called typology. And they classify power relationships and leadership relationships into 6 different categories. And the first category is they're saying that a coach can have legitimate power, and that power is through the position that the coach has over the athlete. It's a legitimate power position, and it's a bit like your lecturer at the university has a legitimate power over you as a student because of the position they're in. And that power is given to them by the institution or the area in which they work in. And that is probably one of the most common power relationships in the world today. That is, you are given legitimate power through the position that you hold. The second one from French and Raven is to do with expert power. And that power is developed through expertise, the expertise of the coach, the expertise of your lecturer, the expertise of the teacher, or it might even be your parents, the expertise that your parent has as a parent. And so this athlete-coach relationship is different from legitimate power. It's based on expert power through the personal expertise of the person. Now, the third one is informational power, which is related to the expertise, but it's a wee bit different. But it's based on giving power to someone. Now note, I've said giving power to someone because this is an important point I want to develop later on. This one is giving power to someone because of the strength of their argument. Now, at the moment, let's pause there. At the moment, you as students at Pretoria University are giving me power because of the position I hold. You are also giving me power because you think I have some expertise. Now, at the end of this hour, you will know I have no expertise, so you will withdraw that expert power. And you're also giving me power because you think I have some argument and knowledge around the coach-athlete relationship that you may not have. And so it's the strength of my arguments that I present. So here are the first three. Now, they can be separate positions of power relationships, or they can be a bit of each. They overlap. Now, the fourth one, which is to do with the reward power, that people have power over others because they control the rewards.
He just like walks along.
It's just like the black hood is natural.
They have power, they have power over others because of the rewards that they can give you. And so your lecturer has power over you because they can reward you for your academic excellence. They can punish you for your academic buffoonery. And so the coach-athlete relationship can also be affected by the rewards that the coach can give the athlete. Now, the fifth one, and this one too is really a dominant form of power, but it can be very negative. And I do know that in New Zealand and probably in South Africa, because you too are also a country that's mad on rugby, many of our coaches of our older generation use this sort of power with their rugby coaching, and indeed in other sports and other coaching, in netball and in football and so on. And that is coercive power. That is that you use punishment of the athlete to have power over them. So you coerce them, you force them to do things.
Yeah, I'm fine now. Thank you.
And so this coercive power can be a negative effect. And with the coach-athlete relationship, we often find coaches who base their coaching style on coercive power, on punishment and bullying, tend to have a very short coaching life career. All right? It tends to be probably no more than 3 years at a maximum of 4 until the athlete, they protest and the coach cannot exercise any more power. Now, the fifth one is what they call referent power. And this is based on respect between people, respect between the athlete and the coach. Now, later on in this presentation, I'm going to highlight aspects of the All Blacks. Even though South Africa won the World Cup a year or so ago, the All Blacks are still the most successful professional sports team in the world. They are operating on about a 92% success rate. And this, why this is relevant to this is because the All Blacks management use the reference style of power coach relationship with the athlete. And it's based on respect between the athlete and the coach. And it's based on sharing. It's based on distributing power. And it's based on recognizing that within the sporting context, the coach does not have all the expertise, and that expertise is shared and it's based on respect. And when we look at the power leadership, we could actually group those 6 styles into either one or the other. That is influential based power or power-based leadership. Okay, we haven't got time to group those today, but you might want to look at that because I'll send the PowerPoint over to LJ. But you could group those 6 in either to influential power or power-based leadership. And when we come to the next one, which is Bourdieu, his theorizing is based on what he calls capital. And there's 3 types of capital. There's economic capital, there's cultural capital, and there's social capital. And the capital can be defined as the capacity of an individual to influence, change, or control environments or situations. So economic capital can control and change environments and situations. Cultural capital can do the same, and so can social. And the key point about what Bourdieu is arguing is that the amount of capital a person has determines the amount of control or influence. Now you can see, if you go back to French and Raven, the person who had informational power had that social control, or the person with expert power probably had social and cultural control. And if you had economic capital, you control the economic resources. You control how much players and athletes get paid, for instance. You can control the resources which help the athlete train. You can control the economic resources which can help with the athlete with nutrition and all those exercise science pieces of magic that goes on. And if you have cultural capital, you can talk really about the forms of knowledge and education that one has. And if you talk about social capital, it's around the resources and the experience and the particular groups that people belong to. Now, Bourdieu argued that he's saying that power relationships are based on that sort of capital: economic capital of control, cultural capital of knowledge and education, social capital about resources and the groups that you associate with. And we know in our society, don't we, that some of the people that have a lot, the rich and the famous, they have access to far more resources than some people that do not. And in the coach-athlete relationship, according to Badu, is based on who has the most capital and how capital can be acquired. And so you can see that the coach-athlete relationship is based on three forms of controlling the economic resources, controlling the knowledge, and controlling the social environment. And so Bordeaux argued is that when one is coaching, one has to be very aware of these different capitals which are involved in the coaching process. And for the All Blacks, for instance, they can't control the economic resources, but they can demand from their rugby union monies that can help them with their education and with their social environment. And so this is a second theoretical position on power relationships. The third one is around Foucault, and he argued that power, and this is I really relate to this one, that Foucault argued that power is not posed by an individual, but power flows between individuals and groups depending on the situation, the time, and the space. So he would argue that individuals do not necessarily have power alone, but the power can be transferred from one person to the other, depending on the situation, the time, and the space. And he also said power is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be positive and it can be negative. And it's a highly productive concept. And the Foucault argued that there's a strong relationship between power and knowledge. Now remember, French and Raven said this is informational power of knowledge and education. And Foucault says that knowledge can play a disciplinary role. That means it can control. That can lead to what he called docile bodies. Now, a docile body is that the human body is controlled and it does exactly what it's asked of, what people are asking of it. Now, when we see high performance sport, we often see docile athletes acting like machines, that they are told how much to eat, how much to rest, how much to exercise, how much socialization they can do. They are controlled and they cannot think for themselves. They become docile, okay? They become very docile and controlled by this relationship of knowledge. And it can lead to healthy but regulated bodies. That means that the coach is regulating the health of the body and also it regulates. And we can see often in performance enhancing drugs that the athlete is so docile that they give way to this performance enhancement. They've got no longer the faculties to think things through. They have given the power away. And Foucault argued people submit to power and become docile and become obedient and become regulated because they are disciplined to do so. And they do this, and this is a really, really important point. They do this because there is a desire. In this case, the athlete desires to be normal, to be an athlete. Now, let's just shift it away from the coach and athlete thing and look at this notion of desire to be normal. You know, the thing that controls and disciplines the human body, the body image, particularly for women, there are two mechanisms that control women's body image. And that is very simply the bathroom mirror, because they want to look skinny little hips, and the bathroom scales. They've got a certain weight to be. They desire to be this way. And so a lot of Foucault's argument is that the athlete, the control power relationship is caused by desire. And the desire, he argues, is created by mechanisms, what he calls mechanisms of power. And I've just said that the bathroom scales and the bathroom mirror are often mechanisms of power around body image. Now, if you can understand the next point, you're a long way in moving towards understanding Foucault's power relationship. And Foucault argues that mechanisms of power are essentially governments and organizations like corporate businesses telling us how to live our life. And this is called governmentality. Now let's relate this to the athlete and the coach. That absolutely reflects the whole term of governmentality at work, because the coach can create the docile, obedient body by telling the athlete what to eat, what to drink, how to exercise, how much sleep, how to train, what weight they should be, etc., etc. And this is governmentality at work. Now, if we look at the whole Olympic movement, their philosophy of Olympism is about the IOC telling us how to live our life. It's a philosophy of living that the Coubertin emphasized. And so it is governmentality at work. And physical education teachers use governmentality to teach the students how they might live a flourishing life through healthy, active lifestyles. It is governmentality at work. And so the coach-athlete relationship is governmentality at work. Now, the fourth one is Anthony Giddens. And Giddens viewed power as the ability of individuals to transform their social world. That was power, whether it's individual power or collective power. And I really want you to remember this point, and remember this because you can apply this in your daily life. All individuals, all groups have power at their disposal. Everyone has power at their disposal, and they allocate power. They have allocated power and authoritative power. Everyone has it, but not everyone chooses to use it. And the power is influenced by resources and social settings. and is subject to change in time and space. And here is the crucial point that you can apply in your life. All right. Often you might say, oh, when you get into an argument, maybe a family argument, oh, I'm the meat in the sandwich. No, you are not. You choose to be the meat in the sandwich. And so this point now is really important from Giddens. He says power over one person is dependent on the power that person exercises in return. That means people are never helpless unless they agree to be helpless, unless you give power to other people. Giddens says other people cannot have power over you unless you agree to give them power. So you at university are giving power to the university to say, yes, you passed, no, you have failed. You're giving them that power. And power is a mix of authority and dependence. And you are never helpless unless you choose to be. And so the athlete-power relationship is based on the athlete giving the coach the power, actually giving the coach the power. Now, in 2003, I was called in to work with the All Blacks because there was a power-athlete relationship within the All Blacks. And I worked with the coaches and they agreed to share the power. The All Black players wanted more power. They weren't going to give it to the coaches, and it became a bit of a crisis. And Graham Henry agreed that the whole environment needed to change. And so from Giddens' point of view, people, and think of the athlete coach here, the athlete is prepared to forgo elements of power as long as behavior meets social rules. Otherwise, there's resistance. And so in the coach-athlete relationship, the athlete may give power to the coach to be bullied, because they may see that if they're bullied, the type of bullying may lead to gold medals. Okay, so they're trading off, they're foregoing elements of power to receive a particular reward. And in the last one, I just got to keep of the time here. In the last one, the process by which individuals or groups acquire power to make decisions. That's what empowerment's about. And really, it's about opportunities for shared leadership and decision-making. And so some of the strongest coach-athlete relationships is shared decision-making. And it's characterized by no real experts. We all work together. We all grow together. And this is starting to be a really powerful contemporary model between the coach and the athlete. And it produces a high level of commitment from the